Okay.
So let me see if I find it so I can share it.
Yeah. All right. Good morning, people. Good morning. Those of you who've tuned in already, thanks so much for coming to my first ever creative resilience show, workshop, discussion, investigation, exploration, examination, soul search, all kind of thing, y'all, all kind of thing this morning. I am Louris Martin Lee-Sing, and I'm here doing all my own tech, putting everything together, and inviting creatives and professionals that I personally like and admire to come on this show and talk to you and talk to me because I need it about creative resilience. What's resilience? Resilience, I think, is the ability to bounce back. You know, when you get a little body blow, how are you going to catch yourself? How are you going to recover? What are some of the things you can do? These are things that I have been struggling with during this whole COVID lockdown. The creative industries, we've been really, really hard hit by it, and it doesn't seem to be ending soon. There's grants and stuff. It may not be enough. I haven't gotten my grant yet. I applied a long time ago. And what can we do about it? Where is our voice? And how do we, as individuals, catch ourselves and come back from the brink? So my guest today is a lady that I admire so, so much. Her name is Amanda Akbarali-Ramdial, and she reached out to me just after the lockdown started to work with her on a wonderful, wonderful project, working with young men, teaching life skills and lots of different skills. And they brought me in to do drama, sort of a drama therapy approach. I was using my Camps Carnival theater technique, and all the skills and magic passed down to me through my ancestors, particularly my mom, who was a teacher of many, many, many years. And everything I know about teaching, that's where I got it from. So I'm very grateful for that. So I'm going to bring Amanda into the studio. She's been standing by like a very good guest.
Hi, good
Amanda,
morning. Good morning, Louris. Good morning to everybody who's out there watching and listening. Hi. And Louris, I have to tell you, I admire you back. I admire you back so much.
we're admire.
Yes.
I think, if you're going to do something like this, then you really have to do it with somebody that you have some chemistry with, somebody
Yes.
that you like, and somebody that you know a little bit. I think that's how cliques get started. So I guess after this, we have to start a clique. We don't have a choice, right?
Yes, we have to. And isn't it just always a wonderful thing when you can find somebody who you have chemistry with? Because
That
you
is,
don't always find that easily, especially in professional circles.
it's
So
true. It is rare and to be treasured. And I'm glad we both saw that.
yes.
So, Amanda, I brought you here today because you are a mediator, you're a counselor, You run this organization, the Opening Lotus, that offers these services and other services
Yes.
to the public. And you have clients, you work with people. What's it been like for you since the pandemic has hit?
Well, Louris, like you, I had so much plans for the Opening Lotus. In November of this year, the Opening Lotus will be just 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And in this really formative stage, there was so much that we wanted to continue to do, and we had to kind of put a pause on some of them, but also we had to really work our brains and figure out how can we keep what we wanted to do, but do it differently. So
Right.
it's taken a lot of meaning, a lot of meetings. It's taking considering a lot of ideas that sound wacky at first and then trying to refine them. So I feel like that's what the Opening Lotus is up to these days, trying to make it work despite everything that's happening in COVID.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I spent a lot of time feeling really sad, and I guess kind of mourning the plans that I had.
Yes.
One thing that I know, everyone who knows me is like really like, stop it. I keep harping on it. I was supposed to stage manage the concert events for the New Fire Festival, which
Yes.
is a festival that I love so much. I went the year before, and it was just this beautiful experience. And Elise, who's one of the organizers, she's somebody that I really admire. Got to get her on the show actually,
Yeah.
and that broke me in a sense. Like the weekend that was supposed to happen,
Yes.
I could not move.
Yes.
What is that? What is that?
Yeah, I mean, grief is definitely part of what many people have been going through during COVID-19, because people talk so much about positive coping, and we've been learning so much about that in recent years. And especially as creatives, you and I, and all of the creatives out there who are listening, we've been trying to do the positive coping. But then COVID came, and a lot of the things that we were accustomed doing to maintain our businesses positively and our personal self-care routines, they got kind of hijacked because there's self-isolation, there's social isolation, there are all of these things that are happening. And we have to really, really try to innovate and think, how can we keep our businesses going? How can we keep our health up despite all of the barriers and the restrictions? So yeah, I remember that first conversation that you and I had, because I was looking at my phone and I was thinking, Louris Martin Lee-Sing, God, I would love to have her come on this project because, I've been following your social media stuff for years,
Lovely.
and I just think that you are this wonderful eclectic mix of mental health background with the comedy and all of that. And I was thinking, gosh, I'm sure Louris is tied up in so many things, but I'm still going to call her, and you said yes. And you said yes. And you did tell me in that first conversation how much you were grieving for the stuff that you were supposed to have.
Of
And
course, first conversation, I bust all them files.
yeah, you did, but
We
that's
do have
how
chemistry.
that's the good chemistry we had because
Yeah.
you were okay being vulnerable, and being vulnerable is also a really important part of mental health wellness. Knowing who is a trusted person that you could say things to that can help you kind of process what's happening.
Well, I
Yeah.
think the word, when you use the word grief,
Mm-hmm.
because I was saying I was mourning, but the word grief for me, it's a word that I associate directly with death.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's such an appropriate word because it was this pandemic. It was the death of something as far as creatives are concerned.
Yeah.
And it's a question of what is the resurrection side of it now?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to catch ourselves? How are we going to recover?
Yeah.
And I think that's a question a lot of people are asking, particularly in the face of the reality that we are all so different.
Yes.
And we
Yes.
all have all these different ways of being and coping. And one of the things you said that resonated with me a lot is having a trusted person to talk to. What does a trusted person, when I'm talking to somebody who is a trusted person, what are the behaviors that I'm looking for that tells me this person is to be trusted?
Well, I feel like one of the first things that jumps into my head is that they listen well.
They listen. What does good listening look like? Break it down for me, because it's obvious, but a lot of people don't know.
I feel like good listening doesn't only have to do with the ears. I feel like good listening is a whole body experience that you can pick up on from the other person and that you could try to practice yourself. So it's about good eye contact. It's about, kind of leaning forward. You notice the person kind of leans forward when they're really paying attention to you. And they hardly interrupt. They give you that time to really vent and say what you want to say. But you do pick up these subtle signs that they're acknowledging what you have to say. And, they're not too quick to jump in and give like really cliche advice. They listen.
You catch yourself, man. Don't worry about that. Don't study that. Let me go and drink a rum, boy.
Yeah, and stop crying, Louris. Stop crying. Yeah,
I'm crying on the inside. I'll never stop.
Yeah, but Louris, also like trust is a really scary word for a lot of people.
Absolutely, I struggle with it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like trust isn't always black and white. I feel like it's on a continuum where you have certain people in your life. They may not be blood. They might be in your field of work. They might be the lady who runs the little parlor down the road. Really, trusted persons can be found anywhere. And I think it's like a constant evaluation and reevaluation of who you keep in your close circle, and also what experiences are they having in their own lives at that time, and can they really handle, you sharing certain things. So I feel like it's on a whole continuum that you have to keep thinking about. But everybody really could benefit from nurturing trusted relationships with different people. Yeah. And during COVID-19, it's so important for everybody to have one or two persons that they could draw support from.
I love the way that you're laying this out, because when you say it, it feels very doable. Like, because I know I'm fortunate, I have so much support.
Yes.
My husband is very supportive. My sister is, so supportive that she's psychotically supportive, but I appreciate it very much.
Do you know I quoted your sister the other day?
What?
Yeah, because you told me that whenever you're upset and you call her, she says, "Louris, go and drink some juice and then call me back."
And babe, go and take a bath.
And babe. So kudos to your sister. She's onto something good.
No, I mean, absolutely. Just having somebody to listen to you is important. Now, a lot of people would say, well, I don't have anybody I trust in my life. My husband is a jerk, or my wife is a jerk. All my friends want to do is lime and drink rum. They don't listen to me. They don't pay attention. So how do I create this circle of trust? And I appreciated the way that you talked about pay attention.
Yeah.
Pay attention. Look around your community and pay attention. And I love how you said the lady in the parlor, because we don't see these people. We don't see the lady in the parlor. We don't see the people in our community who are right around us, who could be a wonderful resource, a safe space, or there's somebody to vent with, somebody to talk to, and to listen to as well. So I love that kind of, look around and build your community, build your village.
Yeah, and I can't tell you, Louris, how passionate I have been about that concept for so long now, right? And the Opening Lotus, one of our principles is promoting like indigenous forms of coping. and for the Caribbean and for Trinidad and Tobago, we're very much about community, very community centric. And in mental health practice with persons in counseling, that's something that I've talked about for years now, that this trusted person who you could almost bare your soul to in your weakest moments doesn't have to always be your mother or your sister or your husband. It could be your hairdresser.
Yeah.
It could be your mechanic, and
Yeah.
very often it is. It might be the nutsman on the highway in Curep there, and you just kind of meet up with him and have deep conversations once a fortnight. And very often you're laughing at me, but
No, it's just so funny that you say that, because I don't know if you have the same experience. I imagine you do, but you have to tell me.
yeah,
I invite that from people
yes.
because I am a good listener. I'm very much non-judgmental because I've done, terrible things.
So
And
have I.
right? So I will take a taxi, right? And by the end of the journey, the taxi man has told me all about his cheating wife.
Yes.
We've talked about his son, how his son doesn't respect him, and his daughter just walk out the door. I don't give no advice. I just listen and say, "Wow, that sounds hard." Huh, so what do you think? What do you think you could do about that? No,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah.
And I don't judge. I don't. And he say, "You don't find I wrong. You don't find I wrong." I say, "Well, I don't know. I don't know enough to know if you're wrong, but I know, I know you're feeling something. So if you want to talk about it, just talk." And then I was like, I need to start charging for this.
Yes, yes, yes. And Louris, to answer your question, yes, I am the same way. I would
People do
go.
that, right?
Yeah, like before COVID, I would go to the market and I would just strike up a conversation with the man selling the lettuce, and we would become friends. And so it would go, and I love that. And as a creative, just like you and many of the people listening, often that's the thing that re-energizes us. This article by Psychology Today online, and I've posted some of these articles on the Facebook page for the Opening Lotus, so y'all could take a peep at it when you're ready. They talk about how one of the main features of creatives is that they see the world differently.
Absolutely.
There's just something about the way that they're wired where it's almost like they wear this lens all of the time that helps them to see things and see people from a different perspective. Yeah.
Well, I agree with you. And I think the other side of that is, while as creatives we may have this different perspective, we also have sort of like a bit of it's almost like we trade that for a lack in other areas. I think that in Trinidad and Tobago, there's a real lack of understanding of the value
Yes.
of creative work and how to manage and access and channel that value. Unfortunately, for it to work, both the public and the private sector have to work together. The
Yes.
creatives and the government, the private sector, as far as big business and so, we really need everybody to be on board. And
Yes.
I think as creators, if we want to see this kind of change, we have to kind of bring it to the table, and we have to take ourselves seriously. And as much as we have this vision, we manifest these things, we see these amazing things. I don't know if we are at a point as a group, because they are individuals, and I don't know if we are at a point as a group where we can show up to the table and take ourselves seriously. And I think that COVID has exacerbated those imbalances and really
Yes.
highlighted it,
Yes.
for a lot of people.
Yes,
Yeah.
you say that word exacerbate, and I see COVID as kind of like this magnifying glass on that
Yeah.
very issue that you're talking about, and
Yeah.
the sun is on the magnifying glass, and something big is going to happen.
Hmm.
Um, so Louris, you've kind of started to talk about a monster. We have a couple
Yeah.
of little monsters to talk about today,
Definitely.
and we have some good things too to talk about.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
you started to kind of get into the creepy stuff, and
Yeah.
I wanna kind of say a little two bits about it one time. Um, this is not BBC. I don't have a teleprompter, so I'm just gonna read from a paper.
Go for it.
Right? So I guess we wanna explore if creatives kind of feel things differently from other people, or if there's something about their range of experiences in their work that makes it maybe a little tougher for them to cope, especially during COVID-19, right? So, in looking up some stuff for preparation for today, I saw that in 2015, right, there was this study that was done in Victoria University where they studied creatives and how they work and what are some of the circumstances that they face. And Louris, there's a lot of things that's kind of unique about creatives. So let me tell you what are
I
some of
always
them.
suspected we are X-Men. No, we're not mutants. Damn it.
It's kind of close. Let me read it out for you. Let me read it. Yeah. So they say that very often creatives face uncertain employment. So let me read it out, right, Louris? And let's kind of use you as a case study. Is that okay?
Sure. I will be your guinea pig. That's what they should do, right?
Yes.
No?
Yes. You're such a cute guinea pig. So I'm going to read them out and you tell me if any of these resonate with you, right?
Okay.
And for those, for the listening and the viewing audience, you can drop some comments to Louris and I and let us know if any of these that I'm calling out resonate with you, or as we say in lovely Trinidad, if it fall in your garden, right? Right. So they say that creatives oftentimes face uncertain employment.
Ooh, definitely. 155%.
Right. Yes. What about low pay? Yeah.
Definitely.
Often have to do shift work.
Yes, that's very true for technical creatives.
Yes, yes. And Louris, I wanted to say, and there's a little teacher inside of me, right? I want to say that oftentimes when people hear creatives, they might just think of artists and singers, right? But I feel like there's this long list that I got online because I'm just sick that way, right?
Because
Yeah.
people don't know how many things are creatives, you know?
Right. So I have a list here of 14 different types of creatives.
Wow.
Right? So it's people who do acting, advertising, architecture, art and design, including fashion design, crafts, for example, pottery makers, furniture makers, tailors, seamstresses, people who are involved in film, TV, radio, photography, video, editorial careers, journalism, museums, libraries, theater, and music. That's a long list. I feel like
everything we see, live in, every color we ever touch, every sheet that you ever lie down on and sleep, every design that you ever use, every time you put on a fan, a creative did these things. So to imagine that you could live in a world without creatives is crazy.
Yes, and I love how you say it. Like every sheet you ever lie down on, every fan you ever put on is a creative mind that had to go through a process, their own personal process of knowing self and exploring their own creativity so that they could get to the point to design the bed sheet or design the fan. And they also would have had to experience a set of unique circumstances in their work or wherever they would have worked. And it is also the history of the world, Louris, that all of these creatives have survived.
Yes.
They have survived, and not only survive, and I want to use the correct language, because recently in the field of mental wellness, where we're not only wanting to survive, but we want to thrive.
Right.
Yeah, so surviving is about, staying like a bare minimum standard of life, right? But thriving is about consciously and deliberately wanting to be your best self.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have that list of creatives there. So I feel like there may be a couple people in the audience who may have heard something in the list and thought, well, I never really thought of myself as a creative.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm realizing I'm a creative. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think one of the challenges I face personally in Trinidad and Tobago is being a full-time creative and
Mm-hmm.
having people say things like, "Oh, you just live off of that,"
Hmm.
or you can make a living as a creative. And what's horrific about it is that these are people who have the power to change policy,
Mm.
impact how creatives,
Yeah.
view a quality of life, and it fascinates me that in this Caribbean, we do not value our creatives, but we value external creatives, right?
Yeah.
So we value the foreign validated, as I call it. We have
Mm-hmm.
foreign used. We love the foreign used there.
And
Creative.
foreign
Oh,
endorsed.
you come
Wanted
here and
foreign endorsed.
yeah, you see, I was in Hollywood now. I was making movies and thing, Then you might get taken seriously, but you'll have to proclaim it from the mountain tops 100,000 times, right? Because they'll be like, "So why you leave Hollywood then? Why you come back here?" You
Yeah.
know. And so there's this real perception here that creatives that being a creative here is a non-sustainable thing. Let's not encourage our children to get into it. Let's discourage them actively, and let's propagate more doctors and lawyers, right?
And it's so bizarre because, we live in Trinidad and Tobago where we purport to have the greatest show on earth, Carnival, that people come from all over the globe to experience all of our creations.
Yeah,
So it's really something that we have to work on, Louris. We have our work cut out for us. We have
yeah,
to team up and change things.
definitely, definitely. What I'm hearing though is that even pre-COVID, there were these factors. The
Mm-hmm.
lack of value, the lack of policy or infrastructure to support real creatives, the lack of cooperation from the different sectors and stakeholders in society, as well as a general low value perception
Yeah.
of local creatives and local creative work. As somebody who's produced like a local film or two or three or four,
Mm-hmm.
there's always this local film that any good, and there's always this kind of assumption that it's going to be crappy, and then surprise that it's not.
Yes.
And on our end as creatives, we have to take responsibility for some of that too, right? Because
Yes.
a lot of times we compromise so that we can get money, we can get paid, we can get something done, and then it's not a really well done thing. So now with COVID, all these things are exacerbated. It's even worse. And now we are trying to say, well, we contribute to the economy. We do this, we do that. And people are like, no, you don't. People were upset about the artist grant. People were like, why the artists had to get that? Why
Hmm.
creators had to get that? Like, people were writing in and saying creatives should not get any money, like them not real. Like
Yeah.
literally people were saying that, and it's shocking. So what can I do? Because I'm here, I'm feeling helpless, budget coming up, what going on happening for us? What are so many things that I can do to bounce back, to start I guess what I want to do, as a creative, I want to be able to do my work. I want to earn money. How do I do that now?
So I feel like everything is tying in so nicely here, Louris. I'm so happy that you have this business, creative business TT, and it's a very specialized. It's very much a niche what you're doing, and while your products might be working with people on a one-on-one level to help them to plan and so on. Advocacy is very, very much a part of what is needed, and we can't ever have a show and talk about mental wellness for creatives and not talk about the shift that is needed in terms of teaching people how to love their culture. Yeah, because that's basically what you were talking about. That in Trinidad and maybe in some parts of the Caribbean, we talk a lot about things, but do we really love our culture? And are we willing to stand up by it and say that I will choose this over this? And just last night I was talking with a new team member of the Opening Lotus, and I was telling her that before COVID, when we would have events, we would try as much as possible to have the food be fish broth and corn soup, that's cooked on a fireside on the site at the event, because this is just the way that we used to do things locally, and it's about bringing things back. And I'm saying all that to say that we really do need the shift, and creatives definitely have a role to play in bringing about that shift. But creatives also have to take care of themselves. Yeah. So we were talking about all of the things that make it hard. And I just want to quote this thing from the study because I thought that it was so well said. It said that in addition to all of the hardships that creatives face, they have to contend with some unique experiences. And I quote, the most bizarre of which is being asked to work for free.
I don't know any other profession where people feel comfortable asking people to work for free. We have a calypso about it. You want me to sing in your party, but you don't want to pay me no money. Honey,
sing it, Louris. Sing it.
It is against the Copyright Act, what you say, right? Because it should be, it's wrong. It's wrong. But
it is wrong.
I've had people offer me exposure. Like, what is that? That and 50 cents could buy me a dinner mint dog. So I definitely hear you on that. That is so real. That is so real. Please continue. You make my rat. You trigger me.
Yeah, I'm here for you, Louris. I'm here for you. Yeah. And even in counseling, sometimes people expect certain things for free. Counselors, I consider myself a creative, and not because you do community work and you're a helper, people should not automatically assume that you'd be willing to do a lot of things out of the kindness of your heart, because it is a profession. And
so what do you say, because I know a lot of creatives who do free work. I do it occasionally. I've really cut down on it in the last couple of decades. Last decade. So how do you say to somebody, like I come to you and I say, hey Amanda, I know you're always trying to help people, boy. I know this little boy, he family real need counseling, boy, but they don't have no money. Come on, counsel them now.
Well, Louris, what I would say, and what I have been saying to people like that during COVID-19 is that, well, I have good news. We have discounted our rates. During COVID-19, we have flexible payment plans. Yeah, so just imagine you can have counseling, a number of sessions done, and we can work out a plan about when in the future you can meet the payment. So if you want to pay in parts, and also we have a program where if you know someone who might be able to sponsor the therapy, we can work out a formal arrangement with them. Yeah. So
I love that response. One of the things that I work with a lot of creatives on is pricing their services.
Yes.
It's an area that causes a lot of anxiety. And from working with creatives on pricing, that's what led me to this series, Creative Resilience, and also to making creative counseling for creatives a part of my service, because as simple as it might sound for somebody to say, could you just help me price my services, price my products, right? The psychology behind that, the pathology that people are struggling with,
Yeah.
and I struggle with it too, which is why I say yes. So to hear that sort of response, which is clear, it's appreciating and understanding that the person has a financial, it's acknowledging that, but it's also saying there's a boundary
Yes.
and I value my services.
Yes.
I came up with a minimum rate, or roll out of bed rate, right? That I use to, for when somebody approaches me about hosting for free or doing free sessions or anything like that. People who need help, and I understand you need help, but you're paying other bills, you're buying things,
Of
you're buying
course.
clothes, shoes, outfits, So this service, which could be even more meaningful and useful to you than those things, I
Mhm.
think you need to invest in the value,
Of
because by
course.
investing in the value, um, you also acknowledge and accept the value, and so it has more of a chance of reaching you. So I think I love that response.
And
Oh,
and I have to tell you, I mean, I learned about it from my cousin Emil, and I'm going to post an article that he wrote a little later today. I
yeah,
mean, he struggled as a creative as well. He's a computer engineer, so
right.
very much a creative in
Very much,
terms of
yeah.
software and all of that. And he has his own business, and he wrote an article about pricing. Based on his own experiences, similar to others. And so on. And that just reminds me, I in this other article that I was reading, in the wee hours this morning, because I procrastinate like hell, like most creatives do.
Look at 20 here.
Hey, yeah. But thank God the Google search was just on my side, and I hit all the
Right.
right. No, but they were saying
You have to be discerning to
yes, yes,
benefit from a Google search. You have to have
yes,
the instinctive and thing. It's all kind of
yes.
shaman spirit guide have to carry you to the right.
You're talking my language. Louris, you're talking my language. But they were saying that very much naturally, creatives, they are very much concerned about making an impact in the community,
Yeah,
doing something different. Many times that is what will motivate a creative to see a project through from start to finish and put many, many hours in that may not necessarily be billed for.
right.
Because at their heart, they want to make an impact. They want to cause a shift. They want to know that I have made input into something that is going to cause something that is previously existing to become different.
Yeah,
And secondary to that comes money.
yeah, yeah.
Secondary to that comes money.
Yeah, oh, good. I feel like you're seeing into my brain.
Yeah,
And
I
you're
am,
covering
because
it
it's in
all.
my brain too. you
No,
know,
absolutely. And for me, I've always looked for that intersect between where that can happen and I can earn. And I
yeah,
think that's been the key to what success that I've had. You
yes,
know,
yes.
so it's great. Emil just made a really great comment here, so I'm just
Oh,
going to
he did.
share it.
Okay,
It might
sure.
take up the whole screen as a whole thing, but
Yeah, but it's good.
yeah,
Let's hear.
he's watching. Thanks so much, Emil. This is great. He says, yes, the perception of value is a tricky thing. Almost no one in TNT will question the value of a BMW because there's a historical context. Creatives tend to create something that is new, and potential buyers have difficulty getting a framework to assess the value. And in TNT, the response of the buyer is to undervalue and beat down the price. This is not only a local challenge, but a human.
Yeah.
Well said. Well, I have to read that article you're writing, Neil. Yes, singing we, yes, singing we. Right,
Yeah.
lovely. You have some talent in your family,
Thank you.
Amanda.
Thank you, Emil. Thank you, Emil. And Emil has been so vulnerable with different audiences about his own experiences as a creative. So we have that word coming back for creatives to remember, being vulnerable.
Absolutely. And I just want to share some of the other comments as well. This
Sure.
is my boy Garth, who's a stand-up comedian or a fall-down comedian, as he calls himself,
Hi,
in
Garth.
Ireland. Hi, Garth. He says Ireland is the same with the external creatives over homegrown. Fascinating, eh? That same issue where we value external over internal is
Yes.
not unique to us. Here's Garth
Yes.
talking about the same thing.
Yes.
He says there are some sectors that still use the visits. Yes, of the TNT group as a benchmark. So it's interesting, that was a group we had gone over with.
Okay.
They're saying, well said, we never see our creatives as professionals.
Yes.
And I think part of it is that we don't take ourselves back to that again. We don't take ourselves seriously because no one else does. It's very hard to get a clear vision of yourself as a powerful income earning creator who can do it, who can make that adjustment to COVID.
Yes.
Who can figure out the tools and the skills that you need to that will work for you as an individual and your uniqueness. When there's no reflection, your friends, your family, your father, your mother, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife, your children, all of them find you just playing the ass.
Yes.
And to some extent, you start to say, well, maybe I play in the ass too. Let me get a real job and do this thing that I love on the side.
And that's something we don't want happening.
It's a tragedy.
That's something we don't want happening at all. We don't want creatives using that kind of harsh, destructive dialogue at all, right? And creatives may have a little more of an inclination to have that harsh dialogue going on up here, not because creatives are more predisposed to mental illness. That's disputed in many studies, right, Louris?
Sure,
Creatives
sure. I think people with mental illness tend to be more attracted to creativity. Is that did I mess with your meds there?
I think you just did. Why did you do that?
I apologize.
So let me just kind of.
That was my layman's opinion there, folks. I shall let know.
Let me just kind of recalibrate, Louris. You're such a naughty guinea pig.
I know I'm a guinea pig ever.
But your cuteness overrides. So we're gonna save it, right? Okay. So studies show that there's no correlation between creatives and mental illness, naturally happening.
No correlation. Right?
However,
that astounds me. I believe that stereotypical myth for a long time and clearly up to today.
Yeah, but remember that 2015 Victoria study was saying that there are so many factors that creatives face in their sphere of work, right? So studies are saying it is that may cause creatives to face depression, anxiety, lack of motivation, withdrawal, alcohol and substance abuse dependency.
So what you said is not us, is them? It's not us, it's the rest of them.
Well, Louris, it's always nice to kind of take ownership of the stuff, because that's the only way we could empower ourselves to, kind of push through the thing. Yeah. So even though creatives might face a unique set of circumstances in their sphere of work that may make them inclined to develop mental health issues, right? There is always a margin and there's always a space where creatives can learn how to push through and overcome. So I know a little while ago you were asking, well, what can we do?
How can we start to push through and overcome? Like, what are some steps, some active behavior things?
Yeah, behavior things. Yeah. I feel like let's talk about money first, because we've been talking about that, and COVID is real and people need to eat. So money is an important issue. I feel like my first thing would be to always seek knowledge. right? And when we say knowledge, I see knowledge as like this big tree, and it has like these little branches, right? And two of those main branches are knowledge about the aspects of your work that you may need to step up and refine more, and also knowledge about self. Yeah. So if you know as a creative that your inclination is to want to give and give to the community, and you don't manage your money well, then you need to do those self checks, and you need to put some people or some things in place to make sure that you just don't give away everything all the time.
Yeah.
So remember at the beginning of the show, we spoke about those one or two trusted people. You know,
Yes.
there are very few people that you can talk about your money to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you may need to say to them, well, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, doing this for free or doing it at this rate. What do you think? Right? So we're talking about seeking knowledge, knowing self, and let's get back to the first branch. The first branch is seeing what aspects of your business do you need to develop further, seek more knowledge on. So if you feel as though you're bad with managing money, or you need some help in negotiating prices with other people, or you need to refine your skills in how to say no,
Yes.
because there's like 100 different ways to say no and get no across. Yeah.
Yes.
You don't always have to say no and slam a door and swell up your face and
Yes.
burn a bridge. You know,
You
you
know how
can
I say no?
tell me how you say no, Louris.
Send me an email with the details.
I love it.
That's usually the end of it.
I love it. I love it. I hope I never get that line from you.
Well, I find for me the way that I figure out how to say no, jokes aside, is I know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that self knowledge and that self awareness is important. So, for example, I know that I love to work on projects with teenagers, boys or girls. I don't like working with children under 10. Right? I can do it, but it's not my jam.
Yeah.
Right? I like teenagers. I like people that could rough up, hit them a little, like a little mild curse word like shit and jackass and things without parents giving me trouble. So I know that, and I like to, and I feel like I have a lot to give that age group. I feel like I connect with them well, and that when I leave the interaction, I've gained something and they've gained something. So that point you made about knowing yourself is so important, because to me, that is how I make decisions. So when somebody approaches me and said, "Oh, I want you to come and do this thing with under fives," I'll be like, "Let me recommend you to this person and this person, like my good friend Afi Ford Hobson from Youth and Theatre. She will work with that age group. She have that age group on lock, boys, girls. She's had them doing all kind of things, right? So knowing my things, when it comes to film, making a film project, if it has comedy in it, if it has a Trinidad and Tobago story in it, and if it is family friendly and focused on kids, those are my things.
Yeah, that's your job.
If I hear one of them three things, or if all them three things, well, guys, it did. I'm making that film, that movie happening.
Yeah.
You know, so in no way, and so it's easy for me to say no to things that don't conform to this. You know?
And I just love how you just did that, because you just kind of illustrated exactly what we're trying to bring across, that it's about knowing self. Yeah. So you just gave your three words. Tell us your 3 words again, Louris.
Comedy, family friendly, and teenagers.
Teenagers, right? So I feel like my 3 words. They are
indigenous. That was Phil.
Indigenous. Oh, you just said
family friendly and comedy. That's my 3 things that attract me to film projects.
Yeah. So I feel like my 3 are indigenous. Yeah. So we intersect there, you and I. So indigenous, innovate. Yeah. And I just forgot the 3rd one.
I know, right? That just happened to me.
Networking.
There you go. That's
Networking.
important.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
important.
So I feel like people who are listening and watching, let's know what's your jam. What's your 3 words as a creative that when you hear them, immediately you think, that's my jam. I'm there.
Yeah,
That's for me.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and all of that is about knowing self. Yeah. And remember that first branch of the tree is seeking out this formal knowledge that you need. So if you know that you're poor with money management or you want to take things up a notch, you might need to enroll in a entrepreneurial management course
Listen,
online.
so I personally go to the University of the YouTubes. You're here?
Yes.
When
Yes.
I want to know something like I had to edit a whole set of footage the other day, and I've edited, but I never edit so much.
Yeah.
I went and looked up all the iMovie editing tricks, everything, and I learned just 2 videos. And that brought the production value, I mean, not up to 100, but it
Mhm.
brought it up to like 50% because, I knew
Yes.
how to do titles, green screen, how to make things big, small, use backgrounds, I just went and learned how to do this thing. And then I did a whole job and delivered it.
Yes.
So it's not about, well, I don't, one of the things you talked about when you talked about self-development and especially about money management,
Mhm.
so many creatives throw up their hand
Yeah.
because when it comes to money, we all, and I am right there too, we all have, and I think that is why what you said about the society not
Mhm.
nurturing us, not taking care of us, not even reflecting us accurately, that leads to this feeling of shame
Mhm.
and this feeling of failure because I mismanage the money, or why don't I have enough money to do the things that I want to do when I've done all of these things, and I think those feelings inhibit creatives from grappling and conquering the money monster.
And let's talk about feelings,
Yeah.
Louris. Let's talk about it. Yeah. If we were to examine something that was definitely unique about creatives, it's this. It's the way the personality is. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to actually take the 2 minutes to read this out
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like all the people who are listening to this live and who will listen to it, this is going to resonate. It's going to, as we say in Trinidad, hit a spot, right? So they say that the way the personality of a creative is, they're like opposites. There's so many facets of opposites that are often working together in a very, very complex dance. One author calls it a cognitive tango, a
Mm-hmm.
cognitive tango that's
Yeah.
always going on that helps to produce the bed sheet or the fan or the piece of software
Yeah.
or the comedy show or whatever it is, right? So here are these polarities. Creative people have a great deal of physical energy, but they're also quiet and at rest. Yeah? I don't know if that resonates with you, Louris.
It does. It does.
Creative people tend to be smart yet naive at the same time. That's
That is
me.
so true. That is
Me.
so true.
Creative people combine playfulness and discipline,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And it's a hard
Creative people.
balance.
It is a hard balance, because you kind of beat yourself up in that dialogue sometimes and think, well, why am I enjoying myself so much? I should be working.
Yeah.
I should be
Yes.
in front of the laptop
Oh
working.
my God. Oh my gosh. That is a big one. And I
So
think
you
a lot of the
hijack
money
your play.
and I think a lot of the money thing is about how dare I get paid for enjoying myself this much.
Mm,
How dare
yes.
I? And I feel sometimes like when I've done certain projects, I've felt like I'm getting away with something. I'd be like, they're paying me for this? I would have done it for free. I really enjoying this. You
Keep
know,
talking, Louris. Keep talking because you're singing the truth.
that naivety as well. You know, kind of coming in. You know, that kind of they let me do what I want. You know,
Yes.
rather
Yes.
than saying, of course they let me do what I want. I'm
Yes.
fucking amazing. You know, so
It's a very unique internal experience to have. Yeah,
absolutely.
against the backdrop of the rest of the world that
Yeah,
seems to often hate their work.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, they said creative people tend to alternate between fantasy and reality. They tend to be both extroverted and introverted. Creative people are humble and proud at the same time. You feeling that?
What? All these contradictions. It's so true.
Yes. Creative people um, tend to escape rigid gender role stereotyping. They
Wow.
they are both rebellious and conservative.
Yes.
They are very passionate about their work, yet they can be extremely objective.
Yes.
Yes, and creative people's openness and sensitivity often exposes them to pain and suffering, yet they gravitate towards a great sense of enjoyment. So we have like 10 polarities here.
Yeah.
This is Russian author. I won't even try to pronounce her name, right? But I'm going to put the rest of it up on Facebook
Yeah. I
today
was
so
gonna
you can
say
look
share
at
the
the
link with me.
article,
Let's see.
right? So we're talking about, tips here for creatives, but we're kind of given some insight into how the personality works and also into how the brain works a little bit. So
Well,
there's,
well, I really liked what you said earlier about kind of boning up, like doing that self development, self
mhm,
awareness, and having that self knowledge. Because these contradictions, I think, are enough to drive anybody crazy.
mhm,
You see that humble, proud thing? Oh, good, oh, good, oh, good,
yeah,
oh, good. I feel that one in my soul. I feel
mhm,
it in my soul. And it's the kind of thing that it keeps me back. It inhibits me. You know,
mhm,
I'm like, yes, I'm amazing, but who am I to say that? That's for other
yes,
people to say. That's our
yes,
real deep creative thought. That's something that we think. We think, well, I know I'm great, but I shouldn't be the one to say it. Somebody else,
exactly. And
my
can I
psychotherapist
derail
might
you?
think,
Can I derail you just how you derailed
oh,
me a
sure,
couple of minutes
real,
ago?
no, man.
Can I drop into that hashtag imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And I
Where
think
you,
all creatives experience this unless they're psychopathic.
but it's a real thing. It's a real thing. Like you talk about getting the check and getting paid, and you think, huh, do I really deserve this? There's so many people who could do this better than me. I should not be in this job. Somebody else
Yeah.
should be in this job. I don't feel good about all this money I just made.
Totally. Or the converse of that, which is I can't I don't want to bring any other creatives on this because then they'll figure out how little I know and how incompetent I
I'll
am.
be exposed.
Yeah, I'll be exposed because this person sounds like they know what they're doing and I will be
Yes.
telling.
And
So I get rid of them.
this is what is so unique about what creatives face. And that's why I'm so glad that you're doing this, Louris,
Thank
because
you.
there might be non-creatives who are listening who might think, what? I didn't earn all this money. I don't know if I should take it. Like that has never crossed my mind.
Never.
There are other
No.
people who, can't even fathom that
I
concept. But for
know.
creatives, it's an too familiar world
It
that
is.
we live
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. When
So,
because the society doesn't reinforce our value, so it's
mhm,
hard for us to, because we like Sisyphus, we're pushing the rock up the hill,
that's right.
and every critique, every negative comment, every rejection, it feels like the rock is rolling back down on you,
Yeah.
and then you start pushing again, and so and for me personally, when I had like a life event,
Hmm.
like my mother died, She had been sick for a long time, and we had forged such a connection during the years of her illness. And then I had a baby a week before she passed.
Oh.
And we'd been caring for her all through my pregnancy and all of that stuff. So it was a real heavy time. And it took me years, at least 4 years, and I don't think I'm all the way back yet. But it took me years to start reclaiming my creative life. That performing, producing. It took me a long time before I could go out into those forums again. I mean, yes, I had a baby, but I'm lucky I have a really supportive husband who deals with all of those things. And that threw me for a loop, and I'm now in a position, 6 years on, where I can look back and I can kind of see what was happening, but when I'm in it, and I think this COVID is kind of like that, we're in it, so we can't see it because we in it now. So it's only in years to come that we'll be able to look back and say, well, this is what happened to me, this is what COVID did to my life, and I think that's a big one.
And I feel like you've raised a mammoth point there, Louris, and I'm so glad that you did. You see how you can talk about that story about how your mom died and so on. There's no shame. You're very comfortable with vulnerability, just like I am as well. It makes me think about, especially for creatives, when we're going through a life transition. For example, you were just about to have a baby.
Yeah.
Right. And then there is a layer of grief or trauma that intersects with that life transition, and that would have been the death of your mom, right? Yeah. Then that creates a very complex trauma. Yeah. And sometimes going to the University of YouTube and reading and so on and talking to that trusted friend, sometimes, while all of those things can be helpful, sometimes it's just not enough. And sometimes, especially as creatives, we need to engage in a formal process, of therapy and counseling, where someone who is trained can really zone in on particular things and help you to work through it. Otherwise, it could continue to hijack your creative process over and over and over in different ways, and then it just kind of feels like torture up here. Because you said that you had to reclaim your creative. What was it you said?
My creative life.
Yeah.
Just to go, I spent a period of time at the Trinidad Theatre Workshop as well. That was like my first. I did a mentoring with the master's program with Wendell Manwaran as the mentor.
Yes.
And interestingly, he was mentored by my mentor, Ellen O'Malley Camps, as well. So it felt she wasn't so accessible at the time, she was traveling a lot and stuff, but she was there for me as well, my sister, everybody. And that program, I did it in 2018. It allowed me to create network. That's one of the things you talk about, because I was able to connect with other creatives who were also interested in doing the program. And that's how I met Lisa Allen Agostini. Well, not met, but reconnected with Lisa Allen Agostini, who really encouraged me to pursue stand-up comedy, and actually did it with me. And we ended up forming a company called Femcom TT. And for the past 2 years, we've been performing feminist comedy. And it's given me so much fulfillment, so much joy to have somebody like Lisa, because she's also like a super wonderful human being. To have somebody like that to work with and to collaborate with. And, when we were down, like we would have a show and we'd sit there and I'd be like, I don't want to do it. And she's like, I don't want to do it. And I was like, we have to do it. And we're like, we have to do it. And then we'd go and afterwards it'd be wonderful, and we'd come back and be like, yeah, that was great. But just, having somebody there, I mean, even though I had my husband, I had my sister, I had my kids, I have my dad, I have big extended family, a lot of support, my cousin living right downstairs, real support. It's different than having a fellow creative
Yes.
to talk to about what you're actually doing and all of that. And it's like a creative, it's like a creative marriage, like a creative relationship.
It is. I love how you play with words. And yes, it is like a creative marriage, because you meet someone who, you feel chemistry with. You feel like they get it. They just get it. Because that feeling of talking to somebody who doesn't get it.
Yes. I think we provided for each other that reflection that we lack in the society.
Yes.
Because I saw her as valuable, as having a lot to give, as being super skilled and an amazing creative. And that's how I interacted with her. And she saw me the same way. And because we both saw each other as valuable, as wonderful, as without limits, we became that.
Mm-hmm.
To a large extent. And it's even just talking about it here, I'm seeing it. It's a bit of an insight, in the context of all the things we've been talking about. So I really appreciate that, because
and it's so interesting, because I wanted the viewers to have 3 takeaways from today,
Sure.
And the first takeaway was, seeking knowledge. And we talked about the knowledge having 2 branches,
Sure.
being technical and very specialized, and also learning about yourself. And the second point, Louris, was having a mentor. And you just did it. Because it's so important to have a mentor. And a mentor does not have to be older than you. People kind of think that a mentor must be somebody older. A mentor just has to be somebody who is more experienced than you, or who has a different perspective. Yeah, but there's something about you all that is synchronized. Something happens so that you are open to receiving, and that person is comfortable sharing, and so the juices flow and everything comes together very nicely. And it's the history of the world that people have always had mentors. They probably call them different things in different cultures, but it's a very important function to fulfill. Very, very important. And when you said, when you spoke about Sisyphus a little while ago, pushing the proverbial rock up, it reminded me of when I was at UWI. And there was this lecturer, Justice Anthony Gafour. And I just thought that he was so brilliant that sometimes I used to go online and read some of his articles. And he said a very important thing. And he has 1,000,003 master's degrees from all over the world. I don't know how he does it. Yeah. But in one of his articles, he said that where the legislation and the technical guidance couldn't help him to make a decision, sometimes he would turn to philosophy. To the writings of Socrates and Aristotle, and sometimes it would give him an insight or a different perspective. So when you mentioned Sisyphus a little while ago, I thought of just integrating that as maybe another branch of the whole knowledge tree, that we don't always have to go to conventional sources of information, but we could go back to the old writings. I mean, because people knew what they were doing back then as well.
And we haven't changed.
Yeah.
We haven't changed.
Right.
It's the exact same thing we was 1,000 and 2,000 and 3,000 years ago.
Exactly.
It doesn't need to be stupider or anything like that. It's just a different world with a different context. So it's interesting.
Yes. And I feel like that point flows so nicely into the mentoring takeaway that we want people to leave today with. That sometimes, it's about a tribe. I say this to clients, that it's important for you to find your tribe. And Louris, I find something about the age of 25 of being 25 years old, I find that people just kind of start becoming uncomfortable and they want something more. And,
Yeah.
Louris, we really should get together and do something for the 25s, about
Quarter century crisis.
quarter century. You
That's
see,
what I call it. The
you
quarter
just
century
you
crisis.
just you just string the words so lovely together all of the time. I love it. Yeah, and it's about finding your tribe, and
Yeah.
mentors are part of your tribe. And when
Yeah.
you seek out a mentor, or you seek out to be a mentor, you can be a mentor as well. It's a very gratifying process. Sometimes a mentor will say something to you that you've heard 100 different times, or you've read it 100 different times, but the way that they say it resonates and causes a shift, or
Yeah.
causes something to become unblocked in your head.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the second takeaway. The third takeaway that I wanted to talk about today, and remember we were talking about the creative personality, how they're all of these antitheses, they're all of these contradictions, right?
Yeah.
That all come together and do this, what we call a cognitive tango, right?
Yeah.
That creates these fruits of wonderful creation, whether you're an architect or whether you're a cook or whatever you are. But it's a hard process to manage. Yeah. So you have to kind of, start going through the layers like an onion of knowing self, knowing what are your triggers, knowing what are your keywords. I'm gonna be looking out any comments to see what are people's 3 words. Yeah. Right. It's about knowing self. And part of that is about self-soothing. It's one of my favorite things. I love talking to people about it. One of my colleagues who I worked with in child protection, Vandana Siusanka Ali, she was having a conversation with me about self-soothing, and it really, really resonated. And since that time, about 3 years ago, I really started to build it in a big way and work with people,
Tell me
because
more about it. I'm curious. Sounds lovely.
yeah, if you think of a baby, right? Every time the baby cries, if you run and you lift up the baby might calm down, but the baby doesn't get to learn how to regulate itself or how to manage its own emotions. So that's why our grandmothers would always say, Louris, stop picking up the child every time she cries, because our grandmothers, even though they didn't do a degree in psychology or whatever, just intrinsically, this collective ancestral knowledge was passed on to them, right? Where they just knew that if you leave the baby alone in the crib sometimes when they cry, that naturally this baby might develop a mechanism for self-soothing. Whether it's sucking the finger or whether it's kind of holding a little piece of the bed sheet between their fingers and just kind of rubbing it, or just kind of looking at the fan blowing the curtain. Naturally the baby would find some ways to self-soothe.
So what's a good self-soothe for an adult?
There's
in public.
Oh gosh, there's so many, and I think of Uncle Charlo, Eden Charles, who is a member of my team. We fondly call him Uncle Charlo. He's from Labre. He's so sweet, and he's just such a big proponent for music. Part of the Shazando Steel Band Cooperative Society in Kirep, and what music can do to soothe you. So I know that a lot of people, they have playlists on their phone. They have a list of songs that kind of put them into different moods. And we're saying that maybe you might want to take it a little notch deeper.
Yeah.
Maybe explore some other genres that you may not have been familiar with before, to just kind of find your thing. What is the music?
Do you know what I have found? I think I'm self-soothing here.
Tell me what you found.
There is this one, like I've been meditating, not trying to meditate. I've been meditating a lot more over the COVID period, because
Very good.
the sense of timelessness I've been able to really manage my anxiety and sense of urgency
Very
that,
good.
I have to be doing, and just spending more
Yes.
time being and figuring out my direction, right?
Yeah.
And there's this one video on YouTube, because I like to listen to meditation music that has like what they call theta waves in it.
Right.
Theta waves or delta waves. I have
Yes.
not looked up the science of it. Like, I don't know if it's complete bullshit or what,
You don't need
but
to. If it's working, let it work.
there's this one video where there's a picture of a person with all these different chakras light up, and somehow that one is my jam. Like, I will try all kind of other ones, and I'll be like doing it and be like, "This is, I need my, I need my
Yes.
thing. I can't try this.
Need the
This is not
jam. Yeah. Yeah.
my
Yeah.
fit." And that music, when I want to work and I feel like the brain fog,
Mm-hmm.
from do all these different things.
Yeah.
I put that on, and it just helps me focus on one thing,
Yeah.
because I do so many different things. I'm like, oh, and they're like, no, just do this one thing, and that music helps me to do that. So I definitely
I
self-healing.
love I love how you just described that, Louris, because you're describing it, and I could almost feel how doing that brings about a transformation for you. And I feel
Absolutely.
that that is so important for creatives. Remember, our brains are always doing the cognitive tango, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that can become overwhelming. Right?
Yeah.
Or sometimes it could become confusing. Like sometimes I'm humble, sometimes I'm proud, sometimes I'm extroverted, I'm introverted. Like I like going out and being around people, but
Yeah.
sometimes like I get so drained and irritable around them. Like what is wrong with me? It's confusing. What's happening to me?
Yes.
So
Yes.
so having a few methods of self-soothing always in your pocket is so important in the process of self-management. Be it music, be it something tactile that you hold in your hand. You see little kids and they have like a comfort pillow or a comfort rag, something tactile to just kind of soothe you. And of course, we want to keep it positive, right? We want to
We have
stay away.
another we have another suggestion from a viewer. Marisa Ann says she
Okay.
finds listening to 432 HC music helps me to focus and calm down. Even when my children are upset, I put on that frequency of music. They calm right down. Music is extremely powerful. There you
Yes.
go, parents.
Yes.
There you
For
go,
two.
parents. Just blast instead of blasting gospel music, which I do on occasion. I love Zessa music. I think it's such an interesting
I do.
subgenre, and I
I do
want
as
to see it
well.
too. Yeah, Zessa,
Yeah.
single kids,
It's
those
my
same kids.
it's my bath music.
I know. I'm like such a fan of UTX. It's very scary.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so I think having a choice around that is really important.
Yes.
Being able to choose the music that supports the vibe or the energy, and
Yeah.
not dismissing any genre because I don't like that or that is for this kind of people, or
Yes.
so
Yes.
explore it. I feel like we've given some good guidance.
Yeah, and Louris, I mean, self-soothing is not just about the music. It's about engaging all of the senses.
Mm,
It's about tactile, it's about smell. I've been reading recently about compression, right? So compression is used quite a bit with kids who have behavioral disorders, especially young kids who have behavioral disorders, where they use like these compression jackets and so. And I see in some parts of the world they're doing compression therapy with adults where they kind of go. Now take this with a pinch of salt. They go into a small space,
like a
and they
photo.
kind of surrounded by a soft material that kind of squeezes them a little. They're also home medics. They make these compression pillows where you can kind of just put it on your stomach, and it weighs a couple pounds and it's a little heavy, but there's something about that feeling of a little weight that kind of can self-soothe, can kind of soothe you a little bit. So I mean, look it up. You remember the knowledge tree that we talked about in tip number 1? Kind of look up, see what might work for you, try them out, and then have your list, and have your list on your phone, because
Yeah,
creatives get so engrossed in their process that sometimes it's hard to get back grounded again. Yeah.
yeah, I
So
agree.
So sometimes I feel so entrenched in my thing that I have to literally go to my list on my phone of what is my self-soothing pickups and say, okay, all right, so this I can do now, and I'm going to do this,
Yeah.
and it's going to ground me back. Yeah.
Lovely. Lovely. Well, Amanda, we have gone so far over our 1 hour time. We're about 20
Yes.
minutes over. But I'm loving it. There are no rules. This is the internet. It's anarchy. Burn it all down.
Yes.
We will wrap up now. And I just want to say some of my takeaways from this, which I
Sure.
really appreciate you doing this because it's really useful to me, and I hope to people who are watching and will be watching in the future. Um, in terms of dealing with the traumatic and psychological impact of COVID on creatives and on creative work in this time, some of the things we talked about doing is nurturing trusted relationships so that
Mm-hmm.
you have that safe space to vent and talk. You mentioned the indigenous coping skills that we already have kind of built into our society,
Yes.
and to also look out for the resources that you might be overlooking as far as someone who could provide that safe space or that energy for you. You talked as well about the importance of self-care. As a creative, I try to spend some time walking in nature. I go to the Bamboo Cathedral, and I walk up that hill. I try to do it every other day at least. So that, I mean, every time I come back from that or the next day, I always feel like, wow, that it was like I washed my brain.
Yes.
It feels
Yes.
fresher and clearer. And I
Yes.
find it as I walk up the hill, if I look up, somehow I get more out of it. So there's all these little psychological and neurological things as
Yeah.
well.
You put a new meaning to the term brainwash.
Right? There you go. There you go. There you go. There you go.
Okay.
Also, one of the things we talked about that I appreciate is acknowledging the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Not ignoring it, acknowledging the reality of your past mistakes, of your limitations right now, having that self knowledge so that you can actually start to make active changes. We also talked about self development, taking the opportunity to bone up, to level up as a creative, to learn new skills. For me, editing and graphics are something that I've been doing a lot of work on.
Yeah.
You talked about finding your tribe
Mm-hmm.
and creating your village. And one of the things I really appreciated was your very clear guidance on some self soothing and allowing me to also recognize how
Yes.
I've been using self soothing as a coping strategy
Yes.
with all the anxiety and uncertainty, financial and otherwise. Because, of course, we're all afraid of getting sick too with
Of
COVID. So
course. Of course.
it's a lot.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know if
So,
there's anything you wanted to leave us with as well.
well, I did want to be vulnerable as a creative just for a minute,
Oh,
if
no,
that
no.
if that's okay.
I would love that. Yes, please.
So we talk about how, creatives, what we do is we try to create change and we take risk because we want to make impact. And
Mhm.
there's a service that my team and I had been discussing for a little while now that we want to offer. And I think that me talking about this here is really about encouraging feedback from
Yeah,
the listeners,
yeah.
especially the professionals. So what we wanted to do was start offering bartering services for mental health therapy. Yeah. So it'll be a system really of if you have a good, if you have goods, not services, if you have goods, like if you grow your own food or things like that, but you can't afford the cash to pay for counseling or so, then we can work out an arrangement. And
Bring
it's,
2 chicken, bring a goat. When we talk about barter, this is the
mhm,
kind of thing we talk about: chickens,
yeah,
goats, pigs, and how
yeah,
two goats make one pig, and those kind of things. So
yes,
it's exciting to talk about exchanging goods which are tangible for
Yes.
a service like therapy, which is intangible. So that's
That's
really
right.
innovative.
Yes, that's right. Innovative. And some people might think, oh, it's a little risky. But, we've done the research. We've read all of the clinical studies. We've read the articles that talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of it. We've looked at the guidelines about how to go about it. So this is me saying today that the Opening Lotus is thinking about doing this because we're very, very concerned, Louris, because of COVID-19. There are a lot of people out there, not only creatives, right? There are a lot of people who are suffering with depression, anxiety, they're having suicidal ideation, they're having trouble coping with job loss. There are many medical professionals and other frontliners who are burnt out. Yeah. And they just don't have the cash,
Yeah.
to access therapy. So this is something that we're thinking about to fill a need, and
Mhm.
really we just welcome feedback because it's something that we feel passionate about. We want to do it the right way to minimize risk. So this is the Opening Lotus welcoming feedback from everyone today.
Well, I really appreciate that, Amanda. And let me just share quickly. You can go to Facebook and find the Opening Lotus. There is Amanda and I with our gorgeous selves because she's sharing our flyer for this program. So you guys could go to the Facebook page of the Opening Lotus, get all the contact information and details. It's a pretty active and up-to-date page. Enough respect. So, guys, please go check it out. Touch base with Amanda and her team. They're amazing. And, we need to start taking ourselves seriously and our needs seriously. The amount of murder, death, kill that's going on in this country because people can't handle their
Stress.
feelings or their emotions and they can't cope. They don't have good positive coping skills, so they just murder everybody and then kill themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Is really, really serious. And by building these networks, taking up these tips and this little advice that we're giving, you could save a life, and that life might be your own.
Yeah.
We've had a real surge in suicide here in the
Mm-hmm.
past few months, and it's quite understandable. People cannot cope. So we've learned some ways that we as creatives and people of the wider non-mutant world can use creatives, we are mutants that other people can use. And I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, Amanda. I definitely like to publicly put you on the spot and ask you to come back because I feel like we have so much more to talk about.
Yes.
When the thing go over by half an hour, that means we have to do a next one. All right? That's
Yes,
my
Louris.
lady wisdom there that has come through me in a tanty of discussion.
Yeah, and a
Right?
tanty.
In a
Yeah,
tanty. Just talk like this.
yeah. Louris the Lotus is here for you.
Lovely, lovely. Well, to all our viewers, I just want to say thank you so much for watching, for commenting, just for letting us know that you're there, that you're listening in, saying good morning. Thanks for your positive feedback. I feel like people were kind of feeling us.
Yes.
Giving really positive feedback, showing us that they were, really paying attention to the program and what we were talking about, which I really, really appreciated. So thank you so much for viewing and for your feedback. And yeah, we will definitely be seeing you again. The next edition of this Creative Resilience show is actually going to be on Saturday morning. It's kind of based on my guest schedule, so it's a little random, but you can always find episodes here on the Facebook page and probably on the YouTube page too. All of these reviewers I have there. So, I'm going to be with a gentleman that I really admire and respect, just as I love and respect Amanda. His name is Ken A. Smith. He's a second AD in Canada. He's done a lot of work in Trinidad and Tobago, and I look forward to having him on the program. Amanda, I can't say thank you enough, which is why I've said it like 300 times.
Thank you, Louris. Thank you so much. Thank you. And you said at the beginning of the program that you admire the work that we do at the Opening Lotus,
I
and
do.
we admire your work, Louris. When
You.
COVID was a little thick at the beginning, I saw how you were pushing online to be innovative, and it really did inspire me. So thank you so much.
Right. So, guys, you can find more about the work that I'm doing at Creative Business TT on Facebook. I am Louris Martin Lee-Sing, and we've been here with Miss Amanda Akbarali-Ramdial. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay resilient and bounce back. Bye, guys.
Bye.